Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this Stephen King video, I will be doing a dedicated book review for one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books, and it was our September pick for the Stephen King Book Club run by myself and Ian the Reader. Go check out his channel down below. But of course, I am talking about Christine. And yes, this is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books. I will say when I did my ranking for like all of his books, I think I had this maybe a little bit lower than I would after rereading the book. Because I think this is like, it's either the second time I've read it or the third time. I don't remember. I can't keep track with all of his books and rereads. But I think now it could potentially be top 20. Like if I went back and redid it, it's at least top 25. It's moved up a bit because I think I would either have it like top 30 or like low 30s, high 20s. It's a little arbitrary because a lot of those books in that range are like 4.5 stars. This is definitely a 4.5 star book for me. It's not quite perfect, and I'll get to why that is later on in the review. I'm going to keep this spoiler free, so I'm not going to spoil too much about the book. If it is, it'll be mild. I'm not going to have any major spoilers, but overall, this is one of my favorites. I love the characters. I love the story. It is just one of my all-time favorite Stephen King stories. But there is kind of a major, not a major, but I do have a complaint with it that keeps it from being like a 5-star all-time favorite. It might be a weird reason, and I'll get to that later on, but we'll see what you guys think. But overall, I'm just going to talk about why I love this book and that one complaint that keeps it from being 5 stars. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the review. So first off, if you have no idea what Christine is about, let me tell you. It's basically Stephen King writing about a car and this guy named Arnie Cunningham, who is kind of like a nerd, and his best friend, Dennis, who is a bit more of a jock. He's on the football team, that kind of guy. It's their kind of friendship, but all of a sudden Arnie just gets fixated with this idea of buying this really old, beat-up Plymouth Fury 58. He buys it from this guy named Roland LeBay, and after he buys this car, some subtle changes and not so subtle changes start happening to Arnie. And I'm not going to go into like how he changes, like especially if you don't really know much about this book. But essentially, you know, this car is a very strange car, and it has potentially supernatural abilities, and Arnie is definitely changing in a lot of ways because of this car. It's basically Stephen King's evil car book. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, sometimes Stephen King has very wacky premises that like you hear the premise of it and you're like, oh, evil possessed car. You're like, okay, what is he going to do with that? But then you get into the book and it's actually really good. So he's very good at taking like very wacky, silly sounding premises and actually making it a worthwhile story, because I will say that these characters are what makes the book. Like Arnie Cunningham, Dennis, his best friend, and some other characters you meet along the journey, like Arnie's parents, you know, tons of great characters. Even LeBay himself, very interesting characters. I love the character development and the character traits for all of these characters. Very well crafted. How many times? Drink every time I say the word character. But yeah, great characters in this book. And the story itself, very well paced. I will say, for the most part, in Stephen King's early career, besides The Stand from 1978, he wrote, you know, fairly short novels. Like, you got Carrie and Salem's Lot, The Shining, Cujo, and you know, a bunch of the early Richard Bachman books. They're all kind of between 300, 400 pages. This is kind of like the first book, besides The Stand, that starts to get into longer territory. This is 500 pages with small print, mind you. and it's very well paced. Like, this is a very, I won't say fast paced, maybe fast paced by Stephen King standards, but this book just has a very even pace throughout the book, which later on in his career, some books, the pacing suffers, at least in my opinion, especially with his longer books. But he's still at the top of his game with this, with, the plot moving forward and the character development subtly going on. And it's just a really well told story. I will say it for horror fans, for fans of Stephen King horror, like the horror doesn't really settle in maybe until like halfway through the book, but you still get a lot of great character moments. One of my favorite aspects of this book that I think are kind of underrated is Arnie and his parents, because his parents or at least the mom in particular, she's a very controlling person where she didn't really let Arnie make a lot of decisions in his life. And then kind of the one time he makes a decision on his own to get this car and to like repair it and to just make Christine, which is the name of the car, by the way, his own, his mom just won't have it. She's fed up with it. But Arnie, kind of his whole life, he was, just settled back and let his mom make decisions, even though he probably didn't like a lot of those decisions, but he kind of stands up for himself finally. And I love cathartic moments in books, and there's a lot of cathartic moments, even if Arnie might not be right all the time, but like, especially early on in this book, I love the conflict between Arnie and his parents. So that's an underrated aspect of this book. Obviously, there's really great tension with the horror elements because the car, there's some great stuff in this book. Trying not to spoil a lot if you haven't read this book, but the car itself is a great character in and of itself. And also, the main, I guess, character duo is Arnie and Dennis, and there's definitely a lot of tension between the two because Dennis is noticing a lot of changes in Arnie, and he's having a hard time coming to terms with this because they were best friends their whole life, and now they're kind of getting estranged because of this car. Arnie's obsession with Christine, this really old car that he's slowly repairing. And at some point in this book, a new character is put into the book, a new girl in their high school, Lee Cabot. And Dennis, really thinks that she's hot. Obviously, these are high school guys, obviously. But Arnie ends up with her, which Dennis is kind of jealous, maybe a little bit hard to admit at first, but like he really likes her, or lusts for her at least. But there's a kind of a weird love triangle going on because there's Arnie and Lee, obviously, who are really liking each other, but Christine is kind of getting in the way between that. So Christine is coming between Arnie's and Dennis's friendship and Arnie and Lee's relationship, boyfriend and girlfriend. So a lot of weird stuff happening because of this car. And I will say the second half of this book definitely leans more into the horror aspects of what this car is doing and what happens because of the car. So really great stuff in this book. So I really have a lot of positives with this book. The plot is great. The pacing is great. The characters are great. The horror elements are great. But what keeps it from being like a perfect 5-star Stephen King book? It's kind of a weird reason. And I will admit, probably a lot of people don't care about this. But for me, it's always just weirded me out. And it kind of just, I don't like it. What I'm talking about is that this book is written in 3 parts. You read part 1, and it's written in the first-person point of view of Dennis, who is Arnie's best friend. So you're getting all of the chapters from his first-person point of view. So he's narrating it like, I did this, I saw Arnie do this. You get that, which, Stephen King doesn't normally do. A lot of the times he's writing in third person, but I think he is good at first person when he chooses to do so. But then, because of something that happens to Dennis, he's sort of sidelined a bit for the second part of this book. And for some reason, Stephen King decides to switch to third person limited, and at some points, third person omniscient, where now you're getting third person POVs, POVs from several different characters. Arnie, Lee, the parents, just some mechanics. So like, and the bullies in this book. I even forgot to mention the bullies. There's some bullies in this book because high school and all that. But yeah, you're getting third person POVs from a lot of different people, including Dennis himself. So I don't know if I've ever read a book where you get a first person and a third person POV from the same character. And for me, that's always just rubbed me the wrong way. It's always just feels awkward. Like the whole like first couple of hundred pages or like 150 pages is from Dennis's first person POV. And then all of a sudden in part 2, we're getting third person POVs from Dennis himself. And then in part 3, we switch back completely to first person POV from Dennis. So for part 1 is first person POV from Dennis. Part 2, third person POV from tons of different characters, including Dennis. And then part 3, we switch back to first person POV from Dennis. So it's always just been baffling to me why King wanted to do it that way. And it's always just weirded me out for some reason. I don't like it. Probably for some people, they might not even notice or care at all, which is fine. I know a lot of people love this book and give it 5 stars. But for me, that is the one thing that keeps this book from being 5 stars. It has nothing to do with the actual story. I think from start to finish, it's really engaging and just really well paced, great characters. The ending is even really great, in my opinion. So it's not really anything to do with the story itself or the characters. It's really great, except for that one thing that's always bugged me about this book. It switches from first person to third person, back to first person. And Dennis himself has chapters in first person and third person. So it's just, yeah, it almost makes me wish that this whole book was kind of just told in third person, which, yeah, and I think I wonder if Stephen King like started out just writing it in first person, and then like I mentioned, something happens to Dennis where like he's not going to be involved in a lot of the story, especially with Christine. So I wonder if he just wrote himself into a corner and just like he had to write third person after that, and then after a while he's just like, you know what, I missed this first person. Let me go back to that. I'm just like, why couldn't the whole book just be in third? If the whole book would have been in third person, I think I would have liked it like more. I think I would have given it 5 stars, but that's just always bothered me. Let me know if I'm an insane person or if y'all agree with me about this book. It's always just bugged me. But besides that, this is a 4.5 star Stephen King favorite of mine. It obviously is not 5 stars, so it's not quite top 10 worthy or even possibly top 20 worthy. It's like top 25 at least. He has a lot of great books. So when I say top 25, like that's out of like 80 some books. So it's still really high up there for me, but yeah, it is a really great Stephen King book, and I'm very excited that I got the chance to reread it and to see people's reactions reading it for the first time. A lot of people have read this book in the book club and say that they've really enjoyed it as well. So I'm very glad for that. All right, so that is my little book review for Christine, one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books, although I give it 4.5 stars, not 5 stars for what I mentioned in the video. But what I want to know is, what do you guys think of Christine? Do you guys love this book as much as me, or even more? Like, do you give this book 5 stars? Or do you disagree with me and think that it's a little overrated? I actually think this book might be slightly underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this book. But again, maybe it's just rated. Like, I don't think it's underrated or overrated. I think it's just kind of rated. Or like, I don't know what the word for that is, but I think it's well rated. I think enough people like it and love it that I don't think it really gets a lot of hate. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, just comment down your opinions down below. What do you guys think of Christine? And we'll chat about it. I think next week for Stephen King, I'm going to be talking about best Stephen King books to read in the fall. I think that's what I'm going to do. If not, it'll be something else, and it'll be a fun surprise for y'all. But I think that's what I'm going to go with. Because I think in the summer, I did best King books to read in the summer. I'll link that down below if you want to go check that out. But it's already fall now. But I think I'm going to do that. So stay tuned for that next Friday. And with all of that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And stay subscribed for more content. I try to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, including Stephen King Fridays as well. So, mark calendars for Fridays for Stephen King related videos. And of course, I've got the Bookish Tournament Discord down below where we've got tons of buddy reads and read-alongs happening all the damn time, including the Stephen King Book Club, which, like I mentioned, Christine, was for September. And for October, I talked Ian into reading 2 Stephen King books. Our originally planned one is Revival, one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books. This is top 10 for me, 5 stars. I'm going to have a blast reading this, and I'm going to have a blast seeing people read this for the first time. I can't wait for their reactions. Whether positive or negative, I'm very interested to see what people think. And then, because I got, not backlash, but I got a ton of people saying that The Tommyknockers was one of their favorite books of all time, or they really enjoyed the book. I did an objectively worst Stephen King books video, and a lot of people, like dozens and dozens and dozens of comments of people claiming that Tommyknockers was one of their favorites. So I'm going to reread this book. I'm probably going to regret that decision, but I'm going to read it, do a dedicated book review for it, and see whether or not this is actually a good book. I have a 95% chance that I'm not going to like this book, but maybe a slim chance of hope that this book will get redeemed in my eyes. We'll see. So Revival and Tommyknockers for the Stephen King Book Club for October, for spooky season. And also, I've got my Patreon link down below if you want to go support me there for as little as $1 a month, and my Amazon wishlist if you'd like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.